Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, hope you're having an amazing day. Will Nvidia's RTX 50 series debut this year? And furthermore, will we see one of the biggest performance uplifts that we've actually seen from an Nvidia GPU before? Because those are some claims that a very well-known leaker is making. And just talking about the performance for a second, that would be a very interesting claim if true, because when you consider graphics cards like the GTX 10 series, which was, I believe, about double the GTX 900 series, that would of course be Maxwell to Pascal, well, that is a lot of performance. But yeah, AGF is a very well-known leaker. He put out a ton of accurate information before across several different Nvidia architectures, and both him as well as Coppertite 7 Kimmy have had a pretty damn good track record. Now, he put out a series of tweets, and honestly there's a lot of stuff to get through here, so I'm going to try to do my best to make some sense of this and also provide some additional clarification as some, well, just kind of insight. So, first of all, people are confused about the Blackwell top GPU bus configuration as well as VRAM capacity. You can't add too much at the moment, but basically Blackwell is designed to compete with a MCM RDNA 4. He also adds that Blackwell will fight both RDNA 4 as well as RDNA 5 in its lifespan, so decisions will be different this time around. Now, we'll get into the rest of the quotes in a moment from AGF, but that does make a lot of sense. To my understanding, the general plan seems to be that RDNA 4 will launch in RTX 50, and then again, we will see RDNA 5. With RDNA 4's original, whole purpose being an MCM design, which would be massively more performant than RDNA 3. However, as pretty much everyone at this stage knows, the MCM variants are cancelled, and instead we're only going to see RDNA 4 being the 44 and 48 variant, with 48 being the more performant of the two dies. And the full configuration is roughly on par with a 7900 GRE, maybe a little bit faster depending on how the drivers end up shaping up and a few other, caveats. So ultimately speaking, obviously that is not going to be as fast as a high-end N31 die, but RDNA 5 is a very different kettle of fish. That's a very weird saying, isn't it? Anyway, RDNA 5 will be MCM. And the Halo versions will be massively more powerful. And furthermore, RDNA 5 will also form the basis of data center GPUs. Basically, the design will be slightly changed, and obviously different memory use, for example, HBM rather than GDDR. But essentially, much of the overall design anyway will again find its way into compute focused applications. I'm going to put out a new video pretty soon about RDNA 5 because there's a lot of stuff to discuss there, but ultimately AGF is correct. So what that probably means is Nvidia have to be a lot more thoughtful about how the Blackwell architecture will evolve over time. In fact, one of my sources, if you watched a video that I put out maybe around a week ago, said that there's probably going to be some type of Blackwell refresh. Now, the specifications I was hearing is a 384-bit bus. But more recently, Coppertite 7 is stating that we could see a 512-bit bus, but maybe the 384 launches first with a smaller amount of SM or something like that, and maybe later on we will see a wider bus configuration. Honestly, there's a lot of confusion at the moment. I'm reaching out to some of my sources for clarification, but I will say that I had initially heard that Blackwell would also have an MCM variant, but that seemed to have been cancelled, and now there would be a Blackwell refresh that seems to be monolithic. But again, there's a lot of confusing information at the moment. I'm not quite sure what is correct and what isn't, but it does seem that there are certainly a lot of plans afoot for after probably RDNA 5 launches, because Nvidia certainly does not want to lose the performance war to AMD. Now, he also adds the RTX 50 will launch this year. It's currently going through qualification, and in terms of performance, he states that GB203 is going to be roughly on par with the AD102 in raster. I'm assuming this is full die versus full die, but in ray tracing performance, it will be faster. Now, we'll go more into the specifications in just a moment, but as for the release date, honestly, I have kind of thought that RTX 50 will launch next year. I've mentioned this multiple times. However, I have had between 1 to 2 sources, depending on the times I've asked them, insist that RTX 50 will launch this year. I mentioned that in the previous video. They basically told me that AIBs have said that, you know, to them under the table that yes, RTX 50 will launch. But honestly, I wasn't too sure about it because, so, you know, it's kind of like one of those things where if you have multiple people telling you 2 different things, the best way of, and it's not always the best approach because obviously you don't necessarily know, but let's hypothetically say you've got, let's say 5 people tell you, let's say one thing and 2 people tell you another thing, where you can say, well, I guess 5 versus 2, it's kind of like, well, I guess I go with the version that 5 people are telling me, especially when all of them have been pretty accurate in the past. It's very difficult to know, but according to AGF, yes, we're going to see it launch this year. Honestly, it would kind of make sense from a perspective of Nvidia, because by the time, of course, that we see RTX 50 launch, they would probably release the higher end variants, and then eventually the mid-range would start to come out. It would be very interesting, though, to see the prices of these things. Personally, I'm expecting, well, let's just go with expensive. Now, as for the specifications, now this is the last information that I've personally received. Now, Coppertite 7 again is stating that the 202 variant is 512-bit. The last information that I heard is 384. However, SMs do seem to be 192. Again, this stuff can change, and I'm not stating 100% that this is correct. But as for GB203, you can see that it has 112 SMs from my last count, a 256-bit bus, which also Coppertite 7 has recently stated as well, and 205 is a 192-bit bus with GDDR7, and I'm hearing that it's got 64 SM. I'm not going to read out all of the specifications because I've covered them quite recently, and if you want to pause, well, you can. Now, of course, my specifications could be wrong, but the memory configurations, at least to my knowledge anyway, Coppertite 7 has said that yes, those dies do seem to match up. I will be very interested, though, to see what Nvidia are doing, because honestly, the performance figures I've heard is around 60% or so, maybe a little bit faster as a performance uplift from one generation to another, but the vast majority of the performance seems to be ray tracing. I've heard around 2.5 times faster, with basically Nvidia doubling, tripling, quadrupling. I don't even know how many times they're down at the moment on ray tracing and path tracing. Ultimately, if Nvidia has their way, it would have every single game have full path tracing. We know this, Nvidia have essentially stated this multiple times, and obviously this is still quite a long way to go because, I mean, yeah, path tracing is extraordinarily expensive. So obviously they're going to continue to leverage things like DLSS and other technologies to make sure that it's as performant as possible, because honestly, why wouldn't you? There's no just point in just pissing away a bunch of time rendering stuff if you can make it more efficient, because efficiency, well, it kind of saves things like die space. So it's going to be very interesting, honestly, to see what happens. As a slight aside, and this is, you know, just kind of getting into a slightly broader topic at the moment, I think now is the time to, unless you really need to upgrade your system, I just wouldn't buy anything, guys. There are some exceptions, like if you're on a budget, and let's say, you know, you see a GPU, just hypothetically, for like 200, 300, 400 bucks, and it's a really good deal. That's obviously a very different, you know, it's a very different thing. But I'm talking about like buying an RTX 4090, or, you know, a high-end Zen 4 CPU, or I don't know, what's the 14900KS. I just don't see a reason. I would personally wait, unless, again, you absolutely need to, your current PC's blown up and use it for work, you know, those kind of scenarios. Obviously, you know, if it's for your job, that's an entirely different thing. But I think, generally speaking, I just wouldn't buy an RTX 4090 right now. Especially if you've got a decent card, like, let's say, hypothetically, you've got like a 6800 XT or an RTX, I don't know, 3070, or like a 2080 Ti or whatever. Just wait. Like, honestly, that's just my personal opinion. Obviously, anyone can do what they want. It's your money. But yeah, I would personally just like hold on to your hold on to your dimes, basically. Just wait. I think at this stage, whether Zen 5 hits the lofty IPC goals or not, even if it's like, you know, let's hypothetically say that Zen 5 is only like let's be ultra pessimistic, like pessimistic to the point of it's probably not even realistic, but let's just say it's only 15% faster or 20% faster, which I think it's going to be faster than that, but let's just hypothetically say it was, or the same thing for Arrow Lake. It's so not too far into the future that these things are going to launch. You may as well just wait, especially because Arrow Lake is going to be in tiny platform anyway, and even Zen 5, even though it's technically going to be AM5, you're going to get like a new motherboard and all the other latest crap. So, personally speaking, I would suggest waiting, but yeah. With that said, I'm going to let you all go. Take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Stay safe. Bye for now.